Thomas Thistlewood. Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem Rachak. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai. And I am going to do a video on this guy right here. He's an Edomite, obviously, and his name is Thomas Thistlewood. Now, this was a guy who came from Britain and basically came over to the islands of Jamaica, who then became a slave overseer or a slave plantation overseer, and eventually he became an owner of a plantation. You know, what you will learn about this guy is that he have done many horrendous or horrific acts toward his slaves during the time of slavery, in which a lot of them were inhumane. Most of them were inhumane. You know, how he mistreated his slaves and so forth, man. Okay? Galatians 6 and 7, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Now, in the kingdom of heaven, we are going to get our revenge on the Edomites. However, we're going to do it in righteousness. We're not going to do anything unrighteous. But we are going to get our revenge, man. It's going to be a lot of killing and ass whooping and all kind of stuff going on in the kingdom of heaven. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the scoop on this guy. Thomas Thistlewood, 16 March 1721 to 30 November 1786. So Thomas Thistlewood was a British citizen who migrated to the western end of the colony of Jamaica, where he became a plantation overseer, plantation owner, and slaver. His lengthy, detailed diary is an important historical document chronicling the history of Jamaica. You know, now if you are a Benjamite, you should know about this. When I say Benjamite, I'm talking about you so-called Jamaicans, because you so-called Jamaicans, you come from the tribe of Benjamin. So you will be known as Benjamites, or in the Hebrew, Banyamyan, which means right hand man, okay? Or right hand of the Heavenly Father. It says, in slavery there during the 18th century, it says, so this is what this Edomite, Thomas Thistlewood, was doing to you Jamaicans, aka you Benjaminites, from the tribe of Benjamin. And by the way, if you don't know, when I say Benjamin, Benjamin is one of the 12 tribes or one of the 12 patriarchs of the nation of Israel. So you Jamaicans, you are Israelites from the tribe of Benjamin. So if you are Jamaican, you should know about this. So it says, Thomas Thistlewood's diary includes a detailed account of the brutal treatments of his slaves, including his torture and rape of enslaved women. Thistlewood routinely punished his slaves with fierce floggings and other cruel and gruesome punishments. Okay, floggings. Let's look up what floggings is. so you could better understand. This is what was happening to the slaves. Flogging definition. Okay, so here you go. Flogging is a punishment in which the victim is hit repeatedly with a whip or stick. Okay, so during the time of slavery, slaves were getting whipped on the back. And let me tell you something. When he would whip his slaves on the back, he would whip them over 100 times, or he would give them 100 licks. So he would whip them either 100 times, or he would give them over 100 licks. Now, in the scriptures, it says that here. Well, let me just get it. The scriptures speak about how when you give somebody stripes, I believe it's 40 stripes, but it may not exceed 40 stripes. Let me just type it in. Let's type in stripes. Okay, Deuteronomy. Bam, that's the spirit. Okay, 40 stripes he may give him and not exceed, lest it should if he should exceed and beat him above these many stripes, then thy brother should seem vile unto thee. Okay, and this is going into the in the law. If you have a son, who's doing wrong, you're supposed to whoop him. He's supposed to get 40 stripes. Now, the law, statutes, and commandments do not apply to the so-called white man, but just to show you how wicked this man is, he was giving his slaves over 100 stripes. Okay? So this man had no mercy on his slaves. Okay? And then after he would finish whipping his slaves, you know what else he would do? He would take some salt or some lemon lime, and he would rub it into the wounds of his slaves. Yeah, he would do that just to further increase the duration of the pain. So continuing on, it says, known as the Diary of Thomas Thistlewood, the 14,000-page diary provides a detailed record of his behavior and deep insight into plantation life and slave owner relations. In 1751, he became overseer of a sugar plantation called Egypt, right? Funny how it's called Egypt, which when you look up the word Egypt, Egypt just goes back to the Greek word Egyptos, which means bondage. When you look up the word bondage means slavery. The modern day Egypt today is America. That's why when you look on the back of your $1 bill, what do you see? A pyramid. Why is there a pyramid on the back of your dollar bill? Because we are slaves to the so-called elites. Okay, and not only are we just slaves to the so-called elites, we are debt slaves. Okay, we are slaves to the currency of this system, to this financial system. So it says, within days, he began raping the enslaved women. His diary chronicles 3,852 acts of. So his diary chronicles 3,852 acts of sexual intercourse with 138 so-called black women, which they could have either been Judite women or Jamaican women, or even Haitian women. Okay. So a lot of tares were being born amongst these women, and Yahushua spoke about that. While men slept, the enemy came in and sowed tares. Well, when it says, you know what? Let me just get it. Let me just get it. Okay, so this is the book of Matthew, chapter 13. Let's go ahead and excerpt the whole chapter. One moment though. My laptop is acting. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this is the book of Matthew, chapter 13, verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. The good seed is talking about the Israelites. Okay? And in a spiritual sense, the good seed is the kingdom of heaven. Okay? Or the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Okay? You know, and when I say the kingdom of heaven, I'm talking about this word. This word, which is Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is the word of the Most High, Yahweh. But while men slept, now what does it mean by while men slept? Meaning when we went into slavery, right? While we were captive in bondage, while we were in chains and shackles, while we were out there in the wheat fields picking corn and potatoes and tobacco and all kind of other things, right? So while we were in slavery, right? Well, I mean, as it is written, there shall come a falling away first. So, but while men slept, while we were in slavery, uh, uh, like 450 years ago, okay, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat. I mean, don't quote me on it. I say 450 years ago, but it can be way, way longer than that. So while men slept, during the time of slavery, when we were in chains and shackles, his enemy came. Who's the enemy? The enemy is the so-called white man. Okay? That's our main adversary on the planet. Okay, as it is written, the so-called white man is known as Satan. Okay, he's known as Satan in the Holy Scriptures. The word Satan, when you look it up, goes back to the Hebrew word shatan, which means adversary. Our main adversary, and when you look up the word adversary means arch enemy. When you break down arch enemy, it's main enemy. So who's our main enemy on this planet? The so-called white man. So while men slept, while we were in slavery, when we had chains and shackles on us, his enemy, the so-called white man, came and sowed tares among the wheat. Okay? Now, when it says sowed, that means had sex. So our enemy was having sex with our women. And whenever our women was giving birth to these abominations, to these babies came out with brown skin, but they were not of our nation. They belonged to the so-called white nation. Why? Because the spirit inside that baby is the spirit of an Edomite, a so-called white person. Okay? So his enemy came and sowed tares, meaning, the slave master raped the women, got her pregnant with our baby, Salakia, slip of the tongue, not of the heart. Okay, his enemy, the so-called white man, came and sowed tares. He raped the women of our nation. The women gave birth to their babies. Okay, and those babies came out with brown skin and woolly hair, but those babies were tares. Okay, because they were babies that looked like Israelites, but those babies were Edomites, because the spirit inside that baby was the spirit of an Edomite. So his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Okay? But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, Then appeared the tares also. Man, so the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, does not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then have it tares? The wheat or the Israelites? The tares are the ones that look like Israelites, but their spirit is that of a heathen, a Edomite, a so-called white person. Okay? So from whence have it tares? Okay? He said unto them, an enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Okay? Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest is when Yahweh returns and he sends his angels to deliver his elect men. Okay? I will say of the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Okay? And that the barn is talking about the chariots. So the harvest is talking about when Yahweh returns with his angels, and the barn is talking about the chariot in which the elect will be beamed up into. So many tares was being sown by just this one person, Thomas Thistlewood, who was an Edomite alone. Just him alone, he sowed much tares amongst the nation. So he had sexual intercourse with 138 black women. And he was not using no condoms. So those 138 black women they got pregnant. Okay? He systematically raped enslaved girls and women. Those that ran away were whipped and put in their chains and were put in chains, collars, or placed in field gangs. The field gangs is where the people will be out there working, picking tobacco and, so forth. He sometimes raped more than one woman in a night. After which he would give them some coins for their troubles. Okay, at no time did Thistlewood's treatment of his enslaved workers attract criticism from Jamaica's white settlers. Right. So basically, in other words, the other whites, these so-called self-proclaimed white slave owners, they were basically rooting them on, you know? To the contrary, he fit in fairly well with the so-called white community. You know why? Because he was an Edomite just like them. Okay? In 1753, Thistlewood received a runaway slave's head and he put it on a pole on the road near his home. Okay? So one of his runaway slaves got beheaded, and after he got beheaded, his head was put on a pole on the road of his home. And this is nothing new because the so-called conquistadors and the Spaniards, they were doing this to the so-called North American Indians and the other tribes, the Taino Indians, the Arawaks, the Cherokees, the Choctaws, okay, the Seminole Indians, okay, that they would cut their heads off, they would put them on the pike, and then leave the pike hanging, somewhere with their head on top of it. Okay, so in 1753, Thistlewood received a runaway slave's head and he put it on the pole on the road near his home. Okay, Thistlewood invented a form of torture used on slaves called Derby's dose. And they're not going to tell you what Derby's dose consisted of. Not in this article. So I'll just tell you what Derby's dose is. Derby's dose, well, they give you some of it right here, where you were whipped and then left with lime juice on your wounds. But Derby's dose also and is also consisted of, the slave who ran away will be chained down to a wooden bed, and then another slave was forced to sit on his mouth and basically crap inside his mouth, take a dump right inside of the runaway slave's mouth. Okay, and his mouth would be filled with crap. You know, afterwards, they will put some kind of device, some kind of cage on his head to prevent him from throwing up. That way, the person with the crap in his mouth was forced to gag. If you don't know what gagging is when you go, that's gagging, okay? You over here, you trying to throw up, but you can't, you know? So here it is. You got this extremely horrible and distasteful and this distasteful taste in your mouth, and you're forced to deal with it for hours. Now, the person who was gagged with all this dookie in his mouth, he was gagged for hours, 4 hours, sometimes more than 4 hours. So you can only imagine the mental trauma that the slaves who were victims to this had faced. 5 hours of with just your mouth full of dookie, you know, and it's crazy because if you swallow it, you will just throw it back up, and now you got to deal with your vomit plus the dookie in your mouth, and you're just sitting there, gagging and gagging, repeated gagging, especially for hours, can lead to severe and internal organ damage. So it says, it entailed the slave being flogged and left with lime juice on their wounds. But that wasn't all. That was not all. Okay. I also told you what else Derby's dose consisted of. And those who went through Derby's dose had went through Derby's dose because they might have eaten something they were not supposed to. So like if you were a slave and you were caught out there eating sugar canes, or if you were eating like the fruits of the field, then basically you will become a victim of Derby's dose. Okay, in 1767, Thistlewood purchased a 160-acre plantation called Breadnut Island, Penn. By 1779, he had 32 enslaved people rearing livestock and growing provisions. All of the slaves were branded with his initials. So the modern day branding today is going to be by the chip. And that's why we're warning you people about the chip. We're warning you not to take the chip, because that's going to be their form of branding, because that's going to be the so-called elite's form of branding you. Okay? So there's nothing new under the sun. During the time of slavery, slaves were being branded. So the slaves had two T's branded on them, which was, the initials for, that Edomite's name. So on their right, and it will be on their right shoulder. Check that out. Okay? Now, when they put the chip inside somebody, right, the preferred spot is the right hand. But they can also put it in your right shoulder, right? But again, the RFID chip is the mark of the beast. Do not take it. Okay? It says, At Breadnut Pen, Thistlewood made attempts to match his male and female slaves. Despite this, okay, he continued to rape women. Okay, and you know that's also in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, and the where basically the Lord said that thou shalt lie with a woman and another man shall lie with her. Okay, thou shalt lie with a woman and another man shall lie with her. So, and we know what he means by match his male and female slaves. Basically, he was forcing his male slaves to have sex with the female slaves. Okay. And despite this, he still continued to rape the woman. So by 1781, Thistlewood was becoming regularly ill with syphilis. You know why? Because he was having sex with other men's women. You know, so that was judgment. That was direct judgment from the Heavenly Father Yahweh and direct judgment from his son Yahushai. The Salakia, that was direct judgment from Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So the Lord plagued this man with syphilis, and his sexual abuse declined as a result. You know, hey man, the Lord is terrible, man, and He's also beautiful. For the most of the 70s, Thistlewood slaves suffered with malnutrition while growing produce for the island's white population. If they were caught eating the produce, they were brutally whipped on the back. While his slaves complained of hunger and starvation, Thistlewood entertained guests. And you know, when they say guests, they're talking about other white slave owners. Thistlewood entertained other guests, slave so-called white owners, or so-called white slave owners. Okay, Thistlewood entertained guests with lavish meals. So here it is, your slaves are out there starving, they're hungry, and if they get caught eating any produce, they were brutally whipped on the back. So you see the mistreatment of the slaves here? He never married, but he had a long-term partner, an enslaved woman called Phoeba, with whom he had a son, and his son's name was John, and that dude was a tear. In 1784, he became so ill that he had difficulty writing in his journal, dying at Breadnut Island in November 1786. In his will, he left 3,000 over 250,000. I don't know if that's euros, and 20 pounds and 34 slaves. So just to give you a little history on this man, this man right here, he brutally mistreated his slaves. Okay, and in the kingdom of heaven, he's going to be brutally tortured. Okay, because hey, the Lord's elect is going to have spiritual power. So the Lord's elect is going to be able to kill these Edomites in ways that these Edomites will never be able to kill us. No, I'm not saying I'm of the elect, but I'm speaking to the Lord's elect, whosoever they may be out there. So, Lord's will, you know what? Let me just get this. I'm going to pull out this one scripture and then close it out. Lamentations chapter 4, verse 21. Lamentations 4 and 21. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup, what is that cup talking about? That cup is talking about slavery. So slavery shall also be passed through unto thee. Okay? Thou shalt be drunken and shall make thyself naked. And Edom is talking about the so-called white man, the so-called white nation. With that, I'm going to say Shalom is on to the next one.